The snow fell like ash the night Robert chose another woman. Wilbert stood in the shadows of the great hall, her hand pressed against the stone wall to keep herself upright. The ceremonial fires roared. War banners snapped in the wind. Thousands of wolves had gathered to witness the choosing the moment their alpha king would bind himself to his queen and secure the future of the realm. But Wilbert wasn't supposed to be there. She was a healer, a nobody. The kind of woman nobles stepped around like furniture. She wore no jewels, bore no title, commanded no house. She was invisible. Except to him. For months, Robert had found her anyway. In the forest under moonlight, in the healing chambers after midnight, in stolen moments where his hands trembled when he touched her face, like his wolf knew something his crown wasn't ready to admit. He'd marked her, claimed her, whispered promises against her skin that made her believe she was more than the shadows she'd been born into. And now she was carrying his child. Tonight, she'd planned to tell him. Tonight, she thought, he would finally choose her in front of the world. But the High Elder's voice cut through the hall like a blade. Alpha King Robert of the Northern Bloodline. Make your choice. The candidates stepped forward. Daughters of powerful houses, warriors, diplomats, women who could command armies and forge alliances with a single word. And then there was Maureen Weathers. She moved like winter itself, elegant, lethal, draped in silver and white. Her smile was a weapon. Her bloodline was old money and older violence. House Weathers didn't just want a seat at the table. They wanted the table, the hall, the throne. Robert stood on the raised dais, his black fur cloak heavy on his shoulders, his armor catching the firelight. His eyes glowed like embers, the way they always did when his wolf was close to the surface. Wilbert's heart hammered. She searched his face for the man who had kissed her in the rain, the one who'd held her like she was the only thing keeping him human. But when Robert opened his mouth, his voice was cold, mechanical, empty. I choose Maureen Weathers. The hall erupted in cheers, and Wilbert's world collapsed. The bond mark on her hip, the one he'd burned into her skin with his teeth flared white-hot, like her body was rejecting the choice, like the magic itself was screaming. She pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from crying out. Her vision blurred, her knees buckled. Around her, the crowd roared. Musicians struck up victory songs. Maureen ascended the steps, her hand outstretched, her smile sharp as glass. Robert took it, and Wilbert ran. She didn't stop to gather her things, didn't say goodbye. She fled through the servant corridors, her breath ragged, her body shaking, the bond mark burning so hot she thought it might kill her. By the time the fireworks exploded over the fortress, Wilbert was already gone, vanished into the outer provinces. A ghost, a secret, a woman the Alpha King had thrown away. But here's the thing about mate bonds. They don't break just because you want them to. And here's the thing about Robert. He didn't move on. In the weeks that followed, the kingdom began to rot, crops withered, storms grew violent. Wolves went feral in the forests, attacking travelers and tearing through livestock. The council convened in emergency sessions. Priests whispered about curses. The people grew afraid, because their king, their alpha, was unraveling. Robert tore through the provinces like a man possessed. He burned alliances, shattered treaties, sent his best trackers into every corner of the realm with a single order: find her. He didn't sleep, didn't eat. His wolf clawed at him from the inside, howling for the mate it had lost. Brennan, his first beta, watched his king descend into something feral and tried desperately to hold the kingdom together. But no one could find Wilbert. She'd disappeared too completely, too carefully. And the longer she stayed gone, the more dangerous Robert became. Months passed. Wilbert lived under a false name in a village so remote it didn't even appear on most maps. She became Wren, a quiet healer who kept to herself and asked no questions. Her belly grew, her power deepened, and every night, the bond mark burned, because it never faded, not even a little. She tried to convince herself it was over, that Robert had made his choice, that she needed to survive long enough to bring her baby into the world and build a life far away from crowns and kingdoms and men who broke promises. But the dreams wouldn't stop. Dreams of Robert screaming her name, of his eyes burning gold in the dark, of his wolf tearing through stone and steel to reach her. And then one night, the wolves came. Wilbert was gathering herbs near the tree line when she felt the prickle of being watched. She turned slowly, her heart slamming against her ribs. Eyes, dozens of them, glowing in the shadows. The royal guard. And standing at the front, his face carved from exhaustion and fury, was Brennan. He stared at her like he'd just found a ghost. "Wilbert," he breathed. She took a step back, her hand moving instinctively to her swollen belly. "Don't," she whispered. "Please, just let me go." Brennan's expression shattered. "You don't understand. Robert didn't choose her. He was poisoned." The world tilted. "What?" House Weathers drugged him during the ceremony, suppressed his wolf, muted the bond. He didn't even know what he was saying. Brennan's voice cracked. "The moment the poison wore off, he woke up screaming your name. He's been tearing the kingdom apart trying to find you." Wilbert's legs gave out. She sank to her knees, her mind reeling. Brennan knelt beside her. "He never wanted Maureen. He wants you." But before Wilbert could respond, an arrow punched through the air and buried itself in the tree beside her head. Assassins. Masked, silent, lethal. And at the front, moving like death in human form, was Renee Weathers. The war for the true queen had begun. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. It started in the forest. That's where Robert found her the first time, kneeling beside a wounded wolf, her hands glowing with soft golden light as she coaxed broken bones back together. He'd been hunting alone, trying to escape the suffocating weight of the crown for just one night, when he caught her scent on the wind. Honey, wildflowers, something ancient and untamed beneath it all. His wolf had gone silent, completely still, like it had been waiting for this moment its entire life. Wilbert didn't notice him at first. She was too focused on the animal, whispering words of comfort as her magic knitted fur and flesh. When she finally looked up and saw him standing in the shadows, eyes glowing gold, chest heaving, she should have run. Instead, she'd tilted her head and said, "You're bleeding." He was. A gash across his ribs from a rogue wolf that had gotten too close. He hadn't even felt it. "It's nothing," he'd said, his voice rougher than he intended. "It's infected." She stood, brushing dirt from her simple dress. "Sit." No one gave the Alpha King commands, no one except his council, and even they phrased it as suggestions. But this woman, this nobody healer with dirt under her nails and starlight in her hair, pointed at a fallen log like she expected him to obey. And he did. That was the first night. There were dozens after. He told himself it was just curiosity, just a distraction. But every time he tried to stay away, his wolf clawed at him until he was back in the forest, waiting for her. She never asked him for anything, never treated him like a king. She argued with him about herbs and history and whether wolves could dream. She laughed at his terrible jokes. She fell asleep against his shoulder while he read to her from old books he'd stolen from the royal library. And then one night, under a sky full of stars, he kissed her. She'd pulled back, her eyes wide. "Robert, you can't." "I know." His forehead pressed against hers. "I know what I should do. I know what the kingdom needs. But my wolf doesn't care about politics, Wilbert. It only cares about you." "I'm nobody," she whispered. "You're everything." The claiming happened a week later, not in a ceremony, not with witnesses, just the two of them in a clearing where moonlight pooled like liquid silver. He'd asked her 3 times if she was sure, and each time she'd answered by pulling him closer. When his teeth sank into the curve of her neck and shoulder, the bond snapped into place like a star being born. Power flooded through them, both hot and bright, and utterly undeniable. The mark branded itself onto her skin, a wolf entwined with crescent moons, burning gold before settling into a permanent silver. She was his, he was hers. The magic had spoken. But magic didn't care about politics. Robert held her afterward, his hands shaking. "I'll find a way," he promised. "I'll tell the council. I'll make them understand. They'll never accept me." Wilbert's voice was soft but certain. "I have no house, no title, no army to offer. I don't care. You will when they start a civil war." He'd kissed her then, fierce and desperate. "Let them try. I'll burn the whole kingdom down before I let anyone take you from me." She wanted to believe him. Gods, she wanted to believe him. But 3 days later, Brennan cornered Robert in the training yard. The first beta was a man of few words, but when he spoke, people listened. He waited until the other guards had cleared out before crossing his arms and fixing Robert with a look that had made lesser men confess to crimes they hadn't committed. "The council met last night," Brennan said quietly. Robert drove his sword into the practice dummy. "They always do. They're forcing the choosing. 2 weeks from now." The world stopped. Robert turned slowly. "What?" House Weathers made a formal petition. 3 other houses seconded it. "They're invoking the succession law. If you don't choose a mate by the next full moon, the council can override your authority and choose for you. That's legal, old, and enforceable." Brennan's jaw tightened. "They're cornering you, Robert, and if you don't show up to that ceremony, they'll declare you unfit to rule." Robert's hands clenched into fists. "I already have a mate. A secret mate with no political value." Brennan's voice wasn't cruel, just honest. "You think I don't know about her? Half the guard knows. And if we know, the council will know soon enough. They'll destroy her, Robert. They'll call her a distraction, a liability. They'll make her disappear. I'd like to see them try." "Don't be an idiot." Brennan stepped closer. "You want to protect her? Then you need to be smart. Appease the council. Buy yourself time. Figure out a way to change the laws before they use them to take everything from you." "You're telling me to choose someone else." Robert's voice was deadly quiet. "I'm telling you to survive long enough to win." Brennan's expression softened. "I know what she is to you. I saw the way you looked at her when you thought no one was watching. But if you claim her now, publicly, they'll tear her apart, and you'll lose the throne trying to save her." Robert wanted to argue, wanted to rage, wanted to shift and run until his wolf stopped howling. But Brennan was right. He was always right. 2 weeks, Robert said finally. Brennan nodded. 2 weeks. Robert told Wilbert that night. She'd known something was wrong the moment he arrived. His eyes were too bright, his movements too sharp. "They're forcing the choosing," he said without preamble. The herbs she'd been grinding clattered to the floor. He explained everything. The council's ultimatum, the political trap, the impossible choice between his crown and his mate. Wilbert listened in silence, her face carefully blank. "I'll fight this," Robert said, reaching for her. "I just need time. Once I secure the throne, once I have leverage." "You're going to choose someone else." Her voice was hollow. "No, I'll appear to choose someone else. It's just politics, Wilbert. Just theater. The bond can't be broken by a fake ceremony." "Can't it?" She looked up at him, and her eyes were full of something that made his chest ache. "You'll stand in front of the kingdom and pledge yourself to another woman. You'll let her wear your mark, your ring, your crown, and I'm supposed to just... You're supposed to trust me. I'm supposed to watch the man I love choose someone else and believe it doesn't mean anything?" Her laugh was broken. "Robert, I'm a healer, not an idiot." "Wilbert, go." She turned away. "You have a ceremony to prepare for." He didn't leave. He pulled her against his chest and held on like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. She fought him for exactly 3 seconds before collapsing into his arms, her tears soaking through his shirt. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "That's the only thing that's real. Everything else is just noise." She wanted to believe him. But 2 weeks later, she stood in the shadows of the Great Hall and learned exactly how loud noise could be. The ceremony was a spectacle. Thousands of wolves packed into the fortress, their howls shaking the stone walls. Banners bearing the crests of every major house hung from the rafters. Fires roared in enormous braziers, casting everything in shades of orange and gold. Wilbert had slipped in through a servant's entrance, hidden beneath a cloak that made her look like just another worker. She told herself she wouldn't come. That watching would only make it worse. But she had to see, had to know if Robert would go through with it. The candidates were presented one by one, daughters of generals, heirs to ancient bloodlines, women who could recite battle strategy and diplomatic protocol in their sleep. And then Maureen Weathers stepped forward. She was stunning in the way a blade was stunning, sleek and sharp and designed to cut. Her gown was white silk that caught the light like snow, her hair a platinum river down her back. She moved with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. The crowd murmured approval. House Weathers was powerful, ruthless, exactly the kind of ally a king needed. Maureen smiled as she ascended the steps, and Wilbert's stomach turned. Robert stood on the dais like a statue carved from stone. His black armor reflected the firelight. His fur cloak seemed to drink the shadows. And his eyes, those eyes that had looked at Wilbert like she was the answer to every question he'd ever had, were empty. The High Elder raised his staff. Alpha King Robert, of the Northern bloodline, the council has presented you with worthy mates. The choice is yours, but choose you must. Who will stand beside you? Who will bear your heirs? Who will be your queen? The hall fell silent. Wilbert's hand moved to her belly without thinking. She didn't know yet, not consciously, but her body already understood, already recognized the new life taking root. Robert's gaze swept across the candidates. For one terrible, hopeful moment, Wilbert thought he might refuse, might throw the whole ceremony into chaos and choose her anyway. But then his eyes went distant, glassy, like someone had pulled a shade down behind them. I choose Maureen Weathers. The words hit Wilbert like a physical blow. The bond mark on her hip exploded with pain, white-hot and searing, like her body was rejecting reality itself. She grabbed the wall to keep from screaming. Around her, the crowd erupted. Musicians struck up triumphant songs. Wolves howled their approval. Maureen ascended the final steps, her hand extended, her smile victorious. Robert took her hand, and the bond mark burned. Wilbert ran. She shoved through the crowd, her vision blurring with tears, the pain in her hip spreading through her whole body like wildfire. She barely made it to the corridor before her legs gave out. She collapsed against the cold stone, gasping, her hand pressed to the mark that should have been sacred, should have meant forever. But Robert had chosen someone else. The magic didn't care about politics. It only knew betrayal. Wilbert forced herself to stand, forced herself to move. The fireworks were starting, she could hear them exploding over the fortress. Bright and celebratory, a mockery of everything she'd lost. She made it to her tiny room in the healer's wing and grabbed the only things that mattered. Her mother's necklace, a pouch of herbs, the book Robert had given her. Then she left. The servant tunnels were a maze, but Wilbert had walked them 1,000 times. She knew which passages led to the outer walls, which gates the guards ignored during celebrations. By the time the victory bonfires were lit, Wilbert was already gone. The journey north was a blur of pain and survival. Wilbert had some coin, not much, but enough to buy passage on a merchant's cart heading toward the outer provinces. She kept her head down, her cloak pulled tight, and didn't speak unless spoken to. The bond mark never stopped burning. At night, she dreamed of Robert, of his hands on her skin, his voice in her ear, the promises he'd made under the stars. And every morning, she woke up more certain that those promises had been lies. She found work in a village called Grey Hollow, a place so small and remote it barely warranted a name on most maps. The people there were suspicious of outsiders, but when a child fell from a roof and Wilbert set his broken arm with a skill that left the local healer stammering, they softened. She introduced herself as Wren, just Wren, a traveling healer looking for a quiet place to settle. No one asked too many questions. The cottage she rented was barely more than 4 walls and a roof, but it was hers. She grew herbs in the garden, treated fevers and wounds, delivered babies and eased the dying into their final rest. And she hid her belly as it began to swell, hid the bond mark beneath long skirts and high collars, hid the magic that grew stronger every day, like the life inside her was amplifying something that had always been there. The dreams got worse. Every night, she saw Robert. Sometimes he was screaming her name. Sometimes he was tearing through forests, his wolf form massive and terrible. Sometimes he was just sitting in the dark, his head in his hands, looking more broken than she'd ever seen him. She told herself the dreams didn't mean anything, that they were just her mind playing tricks. But the bond mark never faded, never dulled. It burned every single night like a brand that refused to heal. Months passed. Wilbert's belly grew round and firm. The babies, she realized with a shock, when the local healer examined her, were strong, active. She could feel them moving, could sense their tiny sparks of magic even in the womb. She should have been happy, should have been preparing, but all she felt was hollow. And then Alda arrived. The girl was young, barely 16, with wild eyes and dirt-streaked cheeks. She stumbled into Grey Hollow on a lame horse, asking desperately for the healer. Wilbert brought her inside, gave her water, tended to the blisters on her feet. "What happened?" Wilbert asked gently. Alda's hands shook around the cup. "I came from the capital. I had to warn people. Had to tell someone what's happening." "What's happening?" "The king." Alda's voice dropped to a whisper. "He's gone mad." Wilbert's heart stopped. Alda explained in rushed, terrified fragments, how Robert had descended into something feral after the choosing. How he'd torn through the provinces, burning alliances and shattering treaties, searching for someone no one could find. How the crops had started failing. How wolves were going savage in the forests. How the council was fracturing under the weight of his rage. "They're saying he's cursed," Alda whispered. "That the bond magic is eating him alive because his true mate rejected him." Wilbert's hand moved to her belly. His true mate. No one knows who she is. But the priests say the mate bond can't be broken by choice alone, only by death. And if she's still alive... Alda's eyes were haunted. "The king is offering a reward, a fortune, for any information about the woman he claimed before the choosing." The room tilted. "They're searching everywhere," Alda continued. "Raiding villages, interrogating healers. He's convinced she's hiding somewhere, and he won't stop until he finds her." Wilbert's voice came out strangled. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're a healer. Because if the king's men come here, you need to know what they're looking for." Alda leaned forward. "If you know anything, if you've seen anyone matching the description, you need to report it, before people start dying." Wilbert forced herself to nod. To thank the girl, to send her on her way with supplies and coin. Then she locked the door and sank to the floor, her whole body shaking. Robert was looking for her. The kingdom was falling apart because of her, and she was carrying his heirs in a cottage at the edge of the world, with no idea what to do. That night, the bond mark burned hotter than ever. And for the first time, Wilbert let herself wonder, what if the dreams weren't just dreams? Winter came early that year. Wilbert watched the snow fall through her small window, her hands resting on her swollen belly. The babies were due soon. She could feel it in the way they'd settled, the way her body was preparing. She should have been terrified, should have been planning her next escape, but all she felt was tired. The villagers had grown to trust her. They brought her bread and firewood, helped repair her roof, told her she was a blessing from the gods. She smiled and thanked them, and pretended she wasn't counting down the days until everything fell apart. Because it would fall apart. It always did. She was gathering herbs near the tree line when she felt it, the prickle of being watched. Wilbert straightened slowly, her heart beginning to race. The forest was too quiet. No birds, no wind, just silence. And then she saw them. Eyes, glowing in the shadows, dozens of them. Wolves. Royal Guard wolves, judging by their size. Wilbert took a step back, her hand moving instinctively to her belly. She could run, should run, but she was 8 months pregnant and exhausted, and they'd catch her before she made it 10 feet. The wolves parted, and Brennan stepped into the clearing. He looked older, harder, like the months had carved pieces out of him and left only the essential parts behind, but his eyes, those steady, honest eyes, widened when they landed on her. Wilbert. Her name in his mouth sounded like a prayer and a curse all at once. "Don't." Her voice came out sharper than she intended. "Please, just let me go." Brennan's expression shattered. He looked at her belly, at the exhaustion written across her face, at the cottage behind her that screamed of a life built on hiding. "You don't understand," he said, his voice rough. "Robert didn't choose her." The world tilted. "What?" "Maureen. The choosing. Robert didn't choose her willingly." Brennan took a step closer, his hands raised like he was approaching a wounded animal. House Weathers drugged him. Some kind of poison that suppressed his wolf and muted the bond. He didn't even know what he was saying. Wilbert couldn't breathe. The moment the poison wore off, maybe an hour after the ceremony, he woke up screaming your name. Brennan's voice cracked. "He's been tearing the kingdom apart trying to find you. The bond never broke, Wilbert. It's been killing him." Her legs gave out. Brennan caught her before she hit the ground, lowering her carefully to sit on a fallen log. She stared at him, her mind reeling. "You're lying." "I wish I was." Brennan crouched in front of her. "I've watched him descend into something I don't even recognize. He doesn't sleep, doesn't eat. His wolf is so close to the surface that half the council is terrified he's going to snap and kill them all. He's offering fortunes for information, burning through alliances, threatening war. Why didn't he come himself? Because he knew if he found you, and you rejected him, it would destroy what's left of his sanity." Brennan's eyes were fierce. "He sent me because he trusts me to bring you back alive. To protect you. To tell you the truth." Wilbert's hands shook. "The truth. He loves you. He never stopped. And whatever you think happened at that ceremony, it wasn't real." She wanted to believe him. Gods, she wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But before she could respond, something whistled through the air. An arrow. It punched into the tree beside Wilbert's head with a thunk that made her ears ring. Brennan was on his feet in an instant, his body between Wilbert and the tree line. Get down! More arrows. 12. 24. The royal guards shifted, their wolves massive and snarling, forming a protective circle. And then the assassins emerged from the shadows. They wore black, moved like smoke. Their faces were covered, but Wilbert could see the cold efficiency in the way they drew weapons, the way they fanned out to surround the clearing. And at their center, moving with the grace of a predator, was a woman. She pulled down her mask, revealing a face that was beautiful and empty in equal measure. Renee Weathers. Well, Renee said, her voice light and conversational. This is inconvenient. Brennan's sword was already drawn. Stand down, Weathers. Can't do that. Renee tilted her head, studying Wilbert like she was a particularly interesting specimen. See, my family invested a lot of resources into making sure this little problem disappeared. And here she is. Very much not disappeared. Touch her and I'll rip your throat out. Renee laughed. You're welcome to try. The assassins attacked. It happened fast, too fast for Wilbert to process. The royal guards shifted fully, their wolves crashing into the masked killers with teeth and claws. Brennan fought like a demon, his sword singing through the air, cutting down anyone who got close to Wilbert. But there were too many. Wilbert pressed herself against the tree, her hands on her belly, her heart hammering. She wasn't a fighter, wasn't trained. All she knew was healing. An assassin broke through the line, raised a blade, aimed for her throat. And something inside, Wilbert snapped. Light exploded from her hands, golden and searing and utterly unlike anything she'd ever done before. It wasn't gentle, wasn't controlled. It was raw power that hit the assassin like a battering ram and sent him flying backward into a tree with a sickening crunch. The clearing went silent. Everyone, guards, assassins, even Renee, stared at Wilbert. She stared at her own hands, glowing with light that felt ancient and furious and entirely beyond her control. Well, Renee said slowly, that's new. And then the forest exploded. A wolf massive, black as midnight, eyes burning like molten gold, crashed into the clearing with a roar that shook the trees. Robert. He was terrifying, bloodied, feral. His wolf form was larger than any Wilbert had ever seen, all muscle and rage and barely contained violence. He hit the assassins like a natural disaster. Renee took one look at him and ran. The remaining assassins followed, scattering into the forest like shadows fleeing the dawn. And then the massive wolf turned, looked directly at Wilbert, and shifted. Robert fell to his knees in the snow, naked and shaking, his eyes streaming gold light. He looked like he'd been through a war covered in scars she didn't recognize, his hair longer and wilder, his face gaunt. But when he looked at her, he looked like he was seeing salvation. Wilbert. Her name broke on his lips. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He crawled toward her, literally crawled, like his legs wouldn't hold him, and stopped just inches away. His hands hovered near her face, trembling, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he touched her. I'm sorry. The words came out strangled. Gods, Wilbert, I'm so sorry. I would never, Brennan told me. Her voice was barely a whisper. About the poison. Robert's face crumpled. I woke up and you were gone. I tried to find you. I looked everywhere. I burned the kingdom to ash trying to... He saw her belly then. Saw the swell of it beneath her cloak. His eyes went wide. Wilbert. Twins, she said, her voice hollow. I'm carrying twins. Robert made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh or both. His hand reached out so slowly, like he was asking permission, and when she didn't pull away, he pressed his palm gently against her belly. The babies kicked. Robert broke. He pressed his forehead to her stomach and wept. Great. Shaking sobs that came from somewhere so deep Wilbert felt them in her bones. His hands cradled her belly like it was the most precious thing in existence. I'm sorry, he kept saying. I'm so sorry. Wilbert's hands moved to his hair, not gently. She grabbed it and pulled his head back, forcing him to look at her. You chose her, she said, and all the rage and grief and terror of the past months poured into those 3 words. I watched you stand in front of the entire kingdom and choose another woman. I felt the bond try to tear itself out of my body. I ran because I thought you'd thrown me away. Never. His eyes were wild. Never. I would burn the world before I let you go. You already did. Her laugh was bitter. Alda told me. The kingdom is falling apart. People are suffering. All because of me. All because of them. Robert's voice turned to a snarl. House Weathers. They poisoned me. Manipulated the ceremony. They're the ones who... They're going to kill me. Wilbert's voice went flat. That's why Renee was here. They can't risk the truth coming out. Then we end them. Robert stood, pulling Wilbert carefully to her feet. We go back to the Capitol. We expose what they did. We finish this. Robert, I can't. You can. He cupped her face in his hands. You're stronger than you know. Stronger than I ever imagined. And you're not doing this alone. Brennan approached quietly, offering Robert a cloak. We need to move. Renee will bring reinforcements. Robert nodded. He wrapped the cloak around Wilbert, lifting her easily into his arms despite her protests. I can walk. Let me hold you. His voice cracked again. Please, I've been dreaming of this for months. Wilbert wanted to stay angry, wanted to make him suffer the way she'd suffered. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw the same pain, the same loss. So she let him carry her. They traveled through the night, a convoy of royal guards surrounding them like a living shield. Robert didn't put Wilbert down once, just held her against his chest, his face buried in her hair, breathing her in like she was oxygen. When dawn broke, they saw the Capitol in the distance. And Wilbert's blood ran cold. The banners were wrong. Where the royal crest should have flown, a wolf crowned in silver, there was something else. A serpent coiled around a sword. House Weathers. No, Brennan breathed. They rode faster. The city was different. Occupied. Guards in Weathers' colors patrolled the walls. The gates were closed and heavily fortified. Robert set Wilbert down carefully, his face going deadly calm. What did they do? A messenger approached a young guard Wilbert recognized from the castle. His face was pale. First Beta, my king. He bowed quickly. Lord William Weathers has declared a regency. He claims you abandoned your duties, that the Queen Lady Maureen is ruling in your stead until you're deemed fit to return. The council allowed this? Robert's voice was ice. Half the council is dead, my lord. The other half is imprisoned. Lord William is executing anyone who questions his authority. The guard swallowed hard. He set hostages in the Great Hall. Servants, healers, people loyal to you. He says if you try to reclaim the throne by force, he'll kill them all. Wilbert's heart stopped. Gay? The guard's eyes filled with tears. She's among them. Gay, the kind, gentle woman who'd taught Wilbert everything she knew about healing, who'd smuggled her extra food when she worked too late, who'd been more mother to her than her own had ever been. We go in, Wilbert said. Robert turned to her. Wilbert, they have Gay. They have people who never did anything except be loyal. And they're using them as shields. She met his eyes. We don't have time for a siege. You're 8 months pregnant. I know. She placed her hand over his heart. But I'm also the reason this is happening. So I'm ending it. Robert looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. Together, he said finally. Together. They entered the city on foot, walking straight through the main gates with Brennan and a small guard at their backs. The Weathers soldiers tried to stop them, but one look from Robert, eyes blazing gold, power rolling off him in waves, made them step aside. The Great Hall was a nightmare. Lord William Weathers sat on the throne like he'd been born to it, silver-haired, cold-eyed, draped in stolen regalia. Maureen stood beside him, wearing a crown that didn't belong to her, and lined up on their knees in front of the dais, hands bound, were 24 people. Servants, healers, guards who'd remained loyal. Gay was in the center, her head held high despite the blood on her face. Lord William smiled when he saw Robert. Alpha King, how good of you to finally return. Release them. Robert's voice could have cut steel. Or what? You'll slaughter us all in front of witnesses? Prove that you're the monster we've been telling everyone you are? William's smile widened. I think not. This is treason, Brennan snarled. This is necessity. William gestured lazily. Your king abandoned his responsibilities to chase a ghost. The kingdom was dying. Someone had to take control. By murdering the council? Robert took a step forward. By doing what needed to be done. William's eyes shifted to Wilbert. Ah, and here she is, the mysterious mate, the woman who drove our king to madness. Every eye in the hall turned to Wilbert. She stepped forward, her chin high. Let them go. Your quarrel is with me, not them. Wilbert, no. Robert grabbed her arm. She pulled free gently. It's the only way. How noble. William stood. Very well. The hostages for the Pretender, a fair trade. Don't do this, Gay called out, her voice breaking. Child, don't. It's okay. Wilbert met Gay's eyes and smiled. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She walked forward. Robert tried to follow, but Brennan held him back. Wait, the first beta whispered. Trust her. Wilbert stopped in the center of the hall, surrounded by enemies. She could feel the weight of attention like a physical thing. Could see Maureen's smug expression, William's calculating eyes, the desperation in the hostages' faces. And she could feel the babies moving inside her, could feel their power humming just beneath her skin. You wanted me, Wilbert said quietly. Here I am. William descended the steps. Indeed, the woman who seduced our king, who distracted him from his duties, who broke sacred laws by accepting a claim she had no right to. He circled her slowly. What should we do with you? The truth would be a start. Wilbert's voice was steady. Tell them how you poisoned Robert during the choosing, how you suppressed his wolf and forced him to choose your daughter. Murmurs rippled through the hall. William's expression didn't change. Careful, girl. Accusations like that require proof. I have proof. Brennan stepped forward. The royal physician found traces of nightshade and wolfsbane in the ceremonial wine, a combination that would temporarily sever someone from their wolf. Interesting. William's smile was thin. But the physician is dead. Killed himself in his grief, we were told. You mean you murdered him? Robert snarled. I mean, he's not here to testify. William turned back to Wilbert. So unless you have other evidence, I think we're done here. Wilbert met his eyes. The bond mark never faded. William went very still. If Robert truly chose your daughter, the mark would have transferred, but it didn't. Wilbert pulled down the collar of her dress, revealing the silver wolf and crescent moons burned into her skin. Because you can't break a true mate bond with poison. You can only suppress it temporarily. The hall erupted. William's face went cold. Seize her. Guards moved forward. And the babies inside Wilbert's womb reacted. Power exploded outward, not golden light this time, but something older, primal. The temperature in the hall dropped. Shadows deepened. And for just a moment, everyone could feel it. 2 tiny sparks of ancient magic, furious at the threat to their mother. Wilbert gasped as the power surged through her. It was too much, too strong. She couldn't control it. And then her body began to change. She'd never shifted before, didn't even know she could. But the power ripped through her like a storm, reshaping bone and muscle, tearing away everything human. She fell forward. And when she rose, she was a wolf. Silver white, massive, eyes glowing with the same light that poured from her hands. The hall went dead silent. William stared at her in horror. Impossible. She's not. The doors exploded inward. Robert entered in full wolf form, bigger than Wilbert, black as midnight, eyes like burning suns. Behind him, loyal guards flooded the hall, dozens of them, armed and ready for war. Chaos erupted. Weather's soldiers tried to fight. The hostages broke free in the confusion. Gay grabbed a fallen sword and started cutting people loose. And in the center of it all, Wilbert locked eyes with Lord William. He drew a blade. You're just a healer. A nobody. You think you can... She hit him. Not with magic. With teeth and claws and a mother's fury. They crashed across the hall, scattering guards and nobles alike. William fought back, his blade drawing blood. But Wilbert was faster. Stronger. Powered by something he couldn't understand. She pinned him to the floor, her jaws at his throat. The hall fell silent. Yield, Brennan commanded. William's eyes were wide with terror. You can't, the council will never. The council is dead because of you. Robert shifted back to human form, standing over them both. Your coup failed the moment you underestimated her. Wilbert held William down for one more moment, making sure he understood exactly how powerless he was. Then she backed away, shifting back to her human form with a grace that surprised even her. She stood there, naked and glowing with residual magic, One hand on her belly, blood on her mouth. Every person in that hall dropped to their knees. Not for Robert. For her. The true queen. Someone whispered. The words spread like wildfire. Guards who'd been loyal to Weathers threw down their weapons. Nobles who'd been hedging their bets suddenly remembered their oaths to the crown. Maureen tried to run. She made it 3 steps before Brennan caught her, dragging her back to face justice. The choosing was a fraud. Robert's voice rang out through the hall, performed under duress and manipulation. By the laws of our people, it is void. No! Maureen struggled against Brennan's grip. I am queen. I was chosen. You were chosen by poison and politics. Robert's eyes were ice. But the bond magic doesn't lie, and everyone in this hall just saw who it chose. He walked to Wilbert, removing his cloak and wrapping it around her shoulders. Then, in front of the entire kingdom, the Alpha King knelt. Wilbert, he said, his voice breaking. I failed you. I let them manipulate me. I let you suffer alone. But if you'll have me, if you can forgive me, I swear on everything I am that I will spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you. Wilbert looked down at him. At this man who'd torn a kingdom apart looking for her, who'd fought through poison and politics, and his own descent into madness because the bond wouldn't let him rest. She thought about the months of pain, the loneliness, the fear, but she also thought about the forest, the promises, the way he'd held her like she was precious. And she thought about their children, moving inside her, already so powerful, already demanding their place in the world. Get up, she said quietly. Robert's face fell. Get up, she repeated, because I'm not letting you kneel to me. We do this together, or we don't do it at all. Hope blazed in his eyes. He stood, and she took his hand. I forgive you, she said. But if you ever keep something from me again, if you ever try to protect me by making decisions without me, I will make you regret it. Deal. He pulled her close, his forehead pressed to hers. I love you. I've loved you since the moment I saw you glowing in that forest, and I will love you until the stars burn out. Then prove it. She smiled, small and tired but real. Fix this kingdom. Honor these people. And help me raise our children to be better than both of us. Done. He kissed her then, in front of everyone, claiming her publicly the way he should have months ago. The bond mark flared brilliant gold. And this time, when the light faded, there was a matching mark on Robert's chest. The bond completed, sealed, unbreakable. The hall erupted in howls of celebration. Lord William and Maureen Weathers were arrested, along with 24 co-conspirators. The trials were swift and brutal. Some were executed for treason. Others were stripped of titles and lands and exiled to the farthest reaches of the kingdom. Renee Weathers was never found. Rumor said she'd fled across the sea, but Brennan suspected she was still out there, waiting. It didn't matter. They'd be ready. The kingdom began to heal. Robert worked tirelessly to undo the damage, restoring the council, rebuilding alliances, returning seized lands to their rightful owners. He was ruthless with those who'd betrayed him, and generous with those who'd remained loyal. And through it all, Wilbert stood beside him. Not as decoration, not as a prize, as his equal. She established healing centers in every province, reformed the laws around healers and magic users, gave voice to the people who'd been invisible for too long. The nobles who'd sneered at her before now watched in silent awe as the nobody healer reshaped their world. 3 weeks after the confrontation in the Great Hall, Wilbert went into labor. It lasted 14 hours. Robert refused to leave her side. He held her hand through every contraction, let her break his fingers when the pain got bad, whispered encouragement even when she cursed his name. Gay oversaw the birth, tears streaming down her face. One more push, child. One more. Wilbert screamed. And then a cry. High and strong. A girl, Gay breathed, placing the baby on Wilbert's chest. She was perfect, tiny and pink and furious at being born, with a shock of black hair and eyes that already glowed faintly gold. Robert was crying openly now, his hand stroking his daughter's impossibly small head. She's beautiful, he whispered. We're not done, Gay said sharply. The second one's coming. The next birth was faster. Easier, somehow. Another cry filled the room. A boy, Gay announced, her voice full of wonder. This one had silver hair so pale it was almost white. His eyes opened and they were violet, shot through with starlight. Wilbert held both babies against her chest, exhausted and elated and more complete than she'd ever felt. Robert pressed kisses to her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Thank you, thank you. Name them, Wilbert murmured. Robert looked at his children, these impossible, powerful, precious lives. Lyra, he said, touching his daughter's cheek, for the constellation that guided me back to you. And him? Wilbert asked. Robert's smile was soft. Asher, because he rose from the ashes of everything we lost. Lyra and Asher, the future of the kingdom. The coronation happened on the first day of spring. The great hall had been rebuilt grander than before, with windows that let in rivers of light. Every house in the kingdom sent representatives. Every province sent gifts. Robert stood on the dais in full ceremonial armor, the crown of the Alpha King heavy on his head. And beside him, in a gown of silver and white, wearing a crown of her own, stood Wilbert. Not the hidden mate, not the secret shame. The queen. The high priest spoke the ancient words, blessed the union, declared what the magic had already written. When he finished, the hall erupted in howls so loud they shook the rafters. Robert turned to Wilbert, his eyes bright. Ready? For what? Everything. He took her hand, and together they faced their kingdom. The people who'd once dismissed her now saw the truth. She wasn't just powerful because she'd claimed the king. She was powerful because she'd survived. Because she'd chosen to come back. Because she'd fought for the people who couldn't fight for themselves. And that power, the kind that came from compassion and courage instead of violence, was what the kingdom had needed all along. Years passed. The kingdom flourished. Trade routes reopened. Alliances strengthened. The provinces that had suffered under William's corruption were rebuilt, better than before. Lyra and Asher grew like wildflowers, fast and fierce and beautiful. Lyra inherited her father's tactical mind and her mother's healing gift. Asher had his mother's kindness and his father's wolf. They were terrors and treasures in equal measure. Wilbert still worked in the healing centers. Still got her hands dirty treating patients. Still refused to let her crown separate her from the people she served. Robert still found her in the forest sometimes, gathering herbs by moonlight. And every time, he fell in love with her all over again. One night, years after the coronation, they stood on the balcony overlooking the kingdom. Below them, lanterns glowed in thousands of windows. The city was alive with music and laughter. Do you ever regret it? Robert asked quietly. Everything you went through? Wilbert was silent for a moment. Then she leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. I regret the pain, she said. I regret the time we lost. But I don't regret what it taught me. What did it teach you? That I'm stronger than I knew. That love isn't just the easy moments, it's the choice to stay even when everything is broken. That power without compassion is just cruelty with a crown. She turned to look at him. And that some bonds are worth fighting for. Robert kissed her temple. I will spend every day for the rest of my life being worthy of you. You already are, she said softly. You already are. Behind them, the nursery window glowed. Inside, Lyra and Asher slept peacefully, their tiny breaths synchronized, their magic humming softly through the bond that connected them to their parents. The kingdom was at peace. The bond was complete. And the queen who'd walked away when the Alpha King chose another had come home to a love that would never let her go again. Subscribe to Leanna's Moon Shadow Tales to see more stories like this unfold. And comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going.